السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين. الحمد لله الذي أنزل على عبده الكتاب ولم يجعل له عوجا. الحمد لله الذي أوضح لنا سواء السبيل وجعلنا على بصيرة فيما نأتي وما نذر. سبحانك يا ربنا لا نحصي ثناء عليك أنت كما أثنيت على نفسك. نستغفرك ونتوب إليك، وأفضل الصلاة وأتم التسليم على سيد الأولين والآخرين وعالم السابقين وقائد الغر المحجلين وشفيع المذنبين وسيد ولد آدم أجمعين. اللهم صل وسلم وبارك عليه وعلى آله الغر الميامين وأصحابه نجوم الدين ومن تبعهم بإحسان إلى يوم الدين، وعنا معهم برحمتك يا أرحم الراحمين. اللهم لا سهل إلا ما جعلته سهلا، وأنت تجعل الحزن إذا شئت سهلا. اللهم انفعنا بما علمتنا وعلمنا ما ينفعنا وزدنا علما وفقهنا إذا علمتنا. اللهم انفعنا وارفعنا بالقرآن العظيم. اللهم ألهمنا رشدنا وأعذنا من شرور أنفسنا. أما بعد, dear brothers and sisters here, inshallah, I'll try to explain. I'm sorry I did not prepare it very well. This idea, for sure, as books you have few or more than few books, speaks about the history of Islamic laws from the beginning till our days. In my opinion, or in my mind, I have some differences about certain points. And that's why I collected all these data, from the other authors and try to have some input there. And I'm going to share these ideas with you and see your opinion. Not necessarily to have everything I speak about is right. This is the best thing I know about it, and I may be right or wrong, and I seek your help, and we may try to discuss of these matters, I don't know how it's designated, but I feel you are going to have a lot of questions, and we should find a way of having special time for questions, by those who run this program. So basically, most of those who spoke about this history, they put it in phases or stages, and this is, I think, a very important point to be understood. And we'll try to have the same pattern, in this. So firstly, we'll have the phase number one. As you may expect, this is the time of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. This is the phase number one of the matter, which was a law for the Arab, as they have their tribal system. For sure, they are not familiar with legislation and law like the other civilized people, And the Prophet ﷺ was too perfect in establishing this idea and put for it very settled and base for the essentials and for the common rules and for the detailed rules of this matter, as you may know by the Holy Quran and the tradition of the Prophet ﷺ. In the time of the Prophet ﷺ, as you may imagine, that there's no place for consensus. If the whole nation they have a consensus about a matter and the revelation came opposite to this, the consensus doesn't mean anything. Okay? And here you don't have a place for it. For analogy or qiyas, you may have a place for it, but this place is, most of it came from the Prophet ﷺ to establish, to teach his companion or those among the companions who are skillful, in making ijtihad, to train them to have this analog or to have this qiyas according to the text that they have. So what we need about this phase, firstly to speak about Quran Kareem. For sure, I don't have a lot of time to go in details, but the best source, of speaking about Quran is going to be the history of the Quran and how it was revealed to the Prophet sallallahu and this is for sure most of those regulation and legislation, they were in the Madani time. That means in the last 10 years of the life of the Prophet ﷺ. You have few of them, they were in the Meccan one, which are quite few, namely as-salah and some other rules and regulations. For sure, you have some of these actions, they were prohibited, from the first point, from the beginning of the Islam, no doubt about it, okay? But most of these rules and regulations, they took place in Medina Munawwara. That's why this is absolute rule. Whenever you find Ya ayyuhal ladhina amanu, this is a Madani surah. It cannot be. To the best of my knowledge, you don't have even one verse in the Quran start by Ya ayyuhal ladhina amanu, and it's from the Meccan time. Whereas general rule is not absolute about Ya ayyuhan nas. Ya ayyuhan nas. Most of these verses, they are Makki, but you may find some of these verses as Madani. Like in Surah Al-Baqarah, Ya ayyuhan nas u'budu rabbakum, the beginning of Surah Al-Nisa, Ya ayyuhan nas uttaqu rabbakum. You may have such a thing. So here, as you may feel, as you may imagine, that a significant part of the regulation and rules and law, they are going to come through the Holy Quran as an establishment for these rules, and in that same time, they are going to be explained, they are going to be enlightened by the practice of the Prophet ﷺ, which is the second component. We call it as the tradition or the sunnah al-nabawiyyah al-mutahhara. The second component in the time of the Prophet ﷺ. And as a common rule, general rule, again I'm not going to go in deep discussion of these matters, but you know that the Prophet ﷺ used to encourage his companion not to ask him. Don't ask me. Why? Because this is going to make the rule more detailed and more difficult, which is going to make it perhaps more tough to be practiced by some of us. That's why here in the time of the Prophet ﷺ, the famous companion or the companions surrounding the Prophet ﷺ, they were prohibited of asking the Prophet ﷺ, just leave it alone, do it the way of your understanding, and try to have the minimal required amount of the questions to the Prophet ﷺ. I would like to highlight, even though this was the case, and the Prophet ﷺ was the main and the greatest reference for any dispute or any difference in opinion or whatever, but you find out that you have some of the companion, not many, you have some of the companion, they were looked at as references, in the time of the Prophet ﷺ. Or according to our terminology later on, they are considered as muftis in the time of the Prophet ﷺ. For example, I'm going to give you some names. I may not be able to go over all of them. You have a famous scholar called Ibn Hazm. This Ibn Hazm, a very knowledgeable person. He collected by counting, without judgment, only by counting. He collected that for 7 of the companions, you may have almost a large volume of fatawa given by them. And these are at the top or at most, in giving fatwa during the time of the Prophet ﷺ and later on. He did not limit himself to the time of the Prophet ﷺ. That's why his study is not exactly what I want here. Okay? Because he looked at the companion of their education in fiqh, not in the time in the Prophet ﷺ only, in their life, the whole life. Then he estimated that about 20 of the other companions, just to give you an idea about the number, that you may collect for them a few pages or small letter of fatwa given by them. Then you have a plenty, numerous of companions that they may have one fatwa or two fatwa. This is just to give you a hint and an idea about the levels that we know. Here we are not judging the companion, because what happened in the narration is not necessary to reflect the reality of it. Okay? This is what we know about them. Okay? You may have very knowledgeable person. I give you an example, like Sayyidina Abu Bakr as-Siddiq, perhaps because he passed away only 2 years after the Prophet ﷺ, no time to have a lot of changes and have a lot of questions, and being answered by Sayyidina Abu Bakr as-Siddiq. This is, when we say so, we are not lower our estimation to Sayyidina Abu Bakr as-Siddiq, because these are the data, the result that we have in this about him. Whereas when we speak about Sayyidina al-Khattab, we have a massive changes took place. This is not done by Sayyidina Umar, not done by anyone. This is the ordinary and natural development, of the Islamic State. You have a massive changes took place in the time of Sayyidina al-Khattab, and that's why you are going to find that for Sayyidina al-Khattab you are going to find more significant narration, and much larger amount of them in this regard. But those who used to be marja to fatwa during the time of the Prophet ﷺ, they may be counted like Abu Bakr, Umar, Uthman, Ali. Don't be surprised that these are the famous khulafa, and they are going to be, they were reference, for fatwa in the time of the Prophet ﷺ. Besides them, we have from the Sadat al-Ansar, Ubay ibn Ka'ab, Zayd ibn Thabit, Mu'az ibn Jabal. You have from the others, Abdullah ibn Mas'ud, Abu Musa al-Ash'ari. We may miss some others, of these famous companions. Some narration they may add Abu Darda with the al-Ansar. And these are the famous references, of fatwa during the time of the Prophet ﷺ. Sometimes the Prophet ﷺ used to assign some of them, to go and teach. For example, you read in Sirah that when the people of Medina, they became Muslim, they asked the Prophet ﷺ to send someone with them to teach the people of Al-Madinah. For sure, one of the main purpose was to teach what? To teach the Holy Quran. But we put in mind that in the time of the Prophet ﷺ, when they used to learn the Quran, they used to learn the Quran with its rule or its laws that should be practiced. That's why it's narrated that Sayyidina Umar al-Khattab stayed learning and memorized Surah Al-Baqarah for 8 years. Not because he's not intelligent, no, because he used to practice it, to adapt it for practice. Try to understand the command and prohibition and practice them in their life. His son Abdullah bin Umar, as narrated in Muwatta, he stayed in Surah Al-Baqarah 12 years. We are not smarter than them, but because they used to learn the Quran and practice. That's why when the Ansar, they asked the Prophet ﷺ to send a teacher with them to teach them Quran, it means in it al-fiqh. And that's what Imam Shafi'i said. Imam Shafi'i interpreted the hadith when the Prophet ﷺ said, Ya ummul qawmu aqra'ahum bi kitabillah. The most eligible one to lead the prayer is the one who is the best reciter of Quran. Imam Shafi'i said in interpretation of this hadith, in their time, the best reciter of Quran is going to be the most knowledgeable in fiqh. And this is give you a reflection about the state in the time of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And this is the opinion also of Abu Hanifa and many other scholars. We are not going to go here to the controversy. So the personality which was sent by the Prophet ﷺ to Medina Munawwara was different than these people called Mus'ab ibn Umayr from Mecca. Why we did not include him in this list? because this person, rahimahullah ta'ala, he was killed in Uhud battle, يعني in year 3 of Hijrah. Okay, he did not live long, to be one of those assigned or appointed people, to seek knowledge, from them. Another example was the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. He conquered Mecca. He left Muaz ibn Jabal to teach people of Mecca. Okay? And again, when Yemen became Muslim, the Prophet ﷺ sent governors, from his companion to each area and each spot, of Yemen. And again, he sent Muaz ibn Jabal as what you may call nowadays a supervisor of the whole governance, of Yemen. Okay. This is just to give you the idea how the Prophet ﷺ used to keep the education, the Islamic education, in the areas which come to Islam newly, and how he assigned some of his companions, to take some position in this. So this is just to try to imagine how was the phase one. The last thing I want to speak about, we don't have enough of time, the last point I want to speak about the phase one in the time of the Prophet ﷺ, a famous hadith mentioned in Bukhari, that when the Prophet ﷺ received the revelation to go to Bani Qurayza after the battle of Ditch, or the Ditch battle, he said, don't let anyone pray Asr till he reach Bani Qurayza. And this was understood by the companion, or interpreted, in different ways, in two different ways. The first way, those people, they understood it, the first thing, that the Prophet ﷺ only wants them to hurry up and go there, and they prayed Asr before reaching Bani Qurayza. The others, they said, no, we are going to stick to the literal meaning of this, and they did not pray Asr till after Isha. They prayed Asr after Isha when they reach Bani Qurayza. I'm going, just put it in mind, because I'm going to highlight the effect of this hadith. Here, what I'm trying to say, you have two groups of people, or let's say two schools of thoughts in the time of the Prophet ﷺ, in interpreting and analyzing the text or the commands or whatever of that regard initiated from the Prophet ﷺ. This is going to have its reflect on the mujtahideen or the fuqaha over the years, later. So basically, this was about the phase one during the time of the Prophet ﷺ. If anyone has any question or I missed any point, please write it down and try to answer it later. We'll go now to the phase two. What the major signs about phase two? Here, you have the revelation stopped and the tradition of the Prophet ﷺ stopped. And here, you don't have increase. In the time of the Prophet ﷺ, you may have every day something increased. Okay, so here you should, those things have been limited and have been confined to certain point, but you are going to find different way of approaches, to the new problems that may come face. So here, what are the specialties of phase two? Firstly, the revelation stopped. That means now you limit yourself to the amount of commands and prohibitions that you have revealed from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to His Messenger. Secondly, for sure, you are going to have something erupt or be more pronounced, after the death of the Prophet ﷺ. You have here no resources, of analysis. Namely, one of the first, the most famous one was consensus. And the other one, what we call qiyas or analogy. Even though we said that this is started in the time of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, but here it took more way, of more pronounced one, or to be used. Yani, if it was during the time of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, most of it as a training way or teaching way, here it became a resource, one of the resources, to try to make ijtihad. Besides that, you have many different ways. Yeah, these are the two mainstays that they were added to the Holy Quran and the tradition of the Prophet ﷺ. And this is the major difference, which I don't think this idea is clear in many of the minds, between what we call nowadays Ahlul Sunnah wal Jama'ah and the others. Okay? That is, the main resources for Ahlul Sunnah wal Jama'ah, they are the Holy Quran, the tradition, consensus, and analogy. Okay? Here, I'm not going to go to the details. You have other Islamic section. They have different resources in one way or another. And this is the mainstay. Unfortunately, because nowadays, many people, they say, we are Ahlul Sunnah wal Jama'ah, the others, they are not, We have a lot of controversy and we have a lot of dispute, about this point. And this is the main point, about it. And this is derived from where? It's derived from the Holy Quran, from the tradition of the Prophet ﷺ, and from the practice of those who came after the Prophet ﷺ. The third point that I should highlight, this is phase 2, is al-Khulafa al-Rashidin, which lasted from the death of the Prophet ﷺ roughly to year 40 or 41. Here we should understand that in this time, we have the significant match between the religious person and the politician. And the politician, he was the most religious one. That's why the head of the state was Sayyidina Abu Bakr, then Sayyidina Umar, then Sayyidina Uthman, and then Sayyidina Ali. What's the benefit of this? The benefit of this, whenever you have any problem, even that problem may be related to, let's say, prayer or Hajj or this or that. When it came to the knowledge of the one who is in charge, is going officially to collect people and consult them to come to a conclusion or to come to a rule. You see this point? That's why nowadays people, they say, they compare consensus as voting nowadays. And in these democratic states, the best voting is going to be roughly 55, hardly reach 60. How come your Muslim, your people, Muslim, they said it was 100% the consensus? Here, this comparison is completely wrong. Why? Because in the voting, you are getting the opinion of everyone. And that's why you are going to have massive differences. And you hardly reach, the percentage to reach 60, or perhaps it's almost impossible to reach 60. Whereas here you have a governor, you have a head of state who is responsible to give the decision, and he's going to choose from these people the most knowledgeable one surrounding him. They were not chosen, by their race or by their families or this. No, by their knowledge in Quran, by their knowledge in Sunnah Nabawi Mutahhara, and you name it. And you are going to have few of them. You are going to have roughly, I don't know the number, I don't want to mention a number to be mistaken, but roughly you may have roughly 20% or more or less, okay? And this person, they all graduated from the school of Sayyidina Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. And when they bring the question, any question is for any purpose, Even though they may have difference in opinion, you are going to find many of them give some evidences, to whatever they said. And by this, do you expect to convince the others or not? In many occasions, since they have the same background, they are going to be convinced. And that's why the possibility of consensus here, it's not only impossible, it's highly probable to have consensus. Why? Because here you have people from the same background, they are going to discuss it freely and openly, and they are going to bring the evidences, and all of them almost, they have the same way of priority, how they put the priority of the Quran Kareem, then as-Sunnah Nabawi al-Mutahhar. And they are going to have the open discussion, and to have consensus among 20 of these people, or those who are selected from Medina Munawwara, I don't think it's impossible or it's a fake, to have 100%, percentage in this matter. Especially because most of these cases, they are driven, they are highly recommended by the head of the state because he wants the answer for this. This is, I think, because we receive a lot of criticism now about the consensus, in Islam. And most of the cases of the consensus, I'm not going to say all of them, they happened during the time of Khulafa al-Rashidin, but we are going to find most of them, they happened in that particular time. Because this was a way of getting the benefit of having the head of the state is the most religious one among them, namely Sayyidina Abu Bakr or Sayyidina Umar or Sayyidina Osman or Sayyidina Ali. This is a very important point. You may differ with me in it. I don't know how we are going to discuss it, but I see it very reasonable, to have consensus in such a pattern. So here, this is a very important point. Why? Because it's going to differ after the Khulafa al-Rashidin. Here you have something of what we may call official ijtihad. The ijtihad is going to be something official. It's controlled and ran by the head of the state. Whereas after Khulafa al-Rashidin, the ijtihad is going to be more of academic one, or having schools, or having something of that regard, okay? And it's not controlled or had the input from the official state or the governors or those who are in charge. You see, this is, for me, I look at it as a main difference between the time of Khulafa al-Rashidin and what happened after that. Okay. Last thing I want to mention about the time of Khulafa al-Rashidin, and this statement was given by Masruq. Masruq is a famous successor, famous knowledgeable person. He said, I have studied the knowledge of the companion, and it ended in 6 of them. This is his ijtihad. You may agree. We may agree or not, but I don't advise anyone to disagree, because this is from a person who is knowledgeable and who used to live in that particular time. And regardless of my judgment, how accurate is going to be completely wrong, when I compare it with this judgment, from Masruq. So he said that the knowledge of the companion of the Prophet ended at 6 of them. I'm going to write the names. He said Umar, Ibn Mas'ud, Abu Musa. Most of them mentioned they said Abu Musa. Some of them they said Abu Darda. And Ali, وأبي بن كعب, وزيد بن ثابت. What are the major figures they are missed here. You have Sayyidina Abu Bakr, you have Sayyidina Muaz ibn Jabal as the major figures, okay? And both of them, they are missed here in this list. Why? Because they passed away in very early time. Then he said, these first three, they used to be of the same pattern of ijtihad and to take from each other and help each other. And the other three, they used to be of the same pattern of ijtihad and to take from each other and help each other. Then the knowledge of these six, it ended by two of them, from the first group Ibn Mas'ud and from the other group Ali ibn Abi Talib. For me, this gives a lot of information. For anyone who is experienced, in the narration and how the masail come and how the answer come, is going to find how accurate and how precise this person said in Mas'ud when he mentioned these matters. I don't have time here to go further, to try to explain it deeply, but here, these are the four major points that I look at them in the time of the Khulafa al-Rashidin, or if you want to call it a different name, you may call it the time of the senior companion. Okay, senior companion. We'll move to phase number 3. Again, if you have any question, write it down. Phase number 3 is the phase of the junior companion and senior successors. And it roughly goes from the time of 41 till perhaps the end of the Umayyad Khilafah, which is 132. And here we should match between the political position and the ijtihad position. For sure, you are going to have the first 3 points that we have mentioned in Khulafa al-Rashidin, namely, you have the Quran and Sunnah Mutahhara fixed, at that time, and you have the consensus and you have the analogy. But here, one of the major difference was what? That here you have detachment between the official or the head of the state and those who make ijtihad. Okay? Yani here the Khalifa looked at as an ordinary man. And here you have some separation between those who are at the top or the head of the Islamic Muslim countries as politicians and those who are at the head as religious men. We have this. That's why here consensus, I'm not going to say it became zero, but it became much more difficult to have consensus. And that's why here you have much more obvious split. You have almost the way of establishing the two mainstays in Islamic fiqh. Namely, you have the city of Kufa in Iraq and the holy city al-Madinah in Hijaz. And this was the two major mainstay at that particular time. And to start, as I said, to see the split, you see the difference between the two major school of thought in this regard. For Kufa, for sure this was established by Sayyidina Mas'ud, who was the establisher. I think we mentioned this name, among one of the famous names, in the previous phase. He passed away in the previous phase. And here who took over the students of Abdullah bin Mas'ud. He passed away before this period, and these students, they were the real establisher, of the school of Kufa, if you want to say, or if you want. For sure, I'm going to try to explain later on how they used to have their ijtihad and what's their thought and what's the difference between them and the people in Medina Munawwara. Okay? This was established and has its people who eventually take all the way till phase 4. We'll speak about it later. Whereas in Medina al-Munawwara, the main and most famous companion in it, from that group that we mentioned about the 6, from the other group, is Zayd ibn Thabit. He's the establisher of the fiqh school in Medina al-Munawwara. Okay? And again, this school of thought, it has its role, and it has some differences and some agreement with the people of Medina al-Munawwara. We'll come shortly to speak about these points, later. Here, as I said, you have the students of Abdullah bin Mas'ud. We have many of them. These students, they impressed Ali ibn Abi Talib. Sayyidina Ali ibn Abi Talib entered that city after the death of Abdullah ibn Mas'ud. And he was really impressed. And such a person like Ali ibn Abi Talib, very knowledgeable person. He's not an ordinary man or a simple man. To be impressed is not easily to have him impressed. He was really impressed by the student of Abdullah Mas'ud, and he said, the student of Abdullah Mas'ud, they are the candles of this city or this town. Here you have the student of Sayyidina Zayd ibn Thabit and the other famous companion, in Medina al-Munawwara, and they were named, titled as the 7 fuqaha, al-fuqaha al-sab'a of Medina al-Munawwara. These are the establishers of the Medina school. If you are interested in their names, I'm going to mention the names, even though the head of them was Sa'id ibn Musayyib. This is a famous man, maybe considered senior or intermediate successor, and he was the head of these 7 fuqaha, but he was not the only one. They were 7 of them. These points, they are very important. Why? Because not only the non-Muslim, many of the Muslims, they think that the mazahib, Abu Hanifa wa Shafi'i, they were established by a person sitting on chair and thinking, drinking some water and say, this is the best to be done. As you may see, I'm going to go back. This way, or these schools, they were established at the time of the Prophet. They were sort of unified or get along with each other, as Masruq mentioned, in the time of Khulafa al-Rashidin. Then, I cannot deny, you have more significant splits later on. Okay? And this is going to lead to another famous madhab we are familiar with in the phase number 4. What's main? Again, this point, I got the benefit of it from Kitab al-Muwafaqat, the book of Muwafaqat written by Imam al-Shatibi. And this is, in my experience, I don't know, this idea is not clear in almost 85 to 95 of people speaking about the history of fiqh. And I look at it as very, very important point. Okay? يعني I'm going to give you this example and try to answer it according to my understanding. I'm going to be a little bit go further here. For sure, this is established the school of Imam Malik ibn Anas, or what we call al-madhab al-Maliki. Okay, in phase 4. And this was the root of the school of Abu Hanifa. The point that when you ask people, they don't have definite answer about it. For sure, I know that they used to call this school as school of opinion, Madras al-Ra'i. And they used to call the school of Hadith, Madras al-Hadith. Okay? But when you ask the person, is Madhab al-Maliki Ra'i or Hadith? Should be Hadith. When we look at the book of Maliki, we feel it's Ra'i more than Hadith. Both of these statements, they are wrong. Why? I'm going to answer that. Okay? Here, I'm going to go a little bit back. This is, I collected the narration and I found that Sayyidina Abu Bakr used to do so, Sayyidina Umar. I have narration from Abu Bakr, I have narration from Umar, narration from Uthman, narration from Ali ibn Abi Talib, narration from Zayd ibn Thabit, narration of Aisha, narration of Ibn Abbas, narration of Ibn Mas'ud. All these companions, how they used to handle the problem when they have any new question come or no problem come. Firstly, as mentioned, this is in all these narration it's mentioned but like this. Be careful about it. Firstly, they look at the Quran. Let's say this is what Sayyidina Abu Bakr was described, how he handled the problem when he has a problem or question coming, and how he's going to handle it. He's going to look in the Quran. If he did not find it in the Quran, he'll go to the Sunnah. If he did not find it in the Sunnah, he'll collect the people that we mentioned before. He's not going to call that farmer, and this one, who is busy in something else, okay? He's going to call those who are specialized. Here we don't have voting to ask everyone, to ask the doctor and the other, what do you want to be done, Here you should have the specialized person to speak about it. Like when you have a committee, in a hospital, and they have a problem, you are going to call this committee. You are not going to call the people in the street or the patient in their beds, to come and have an idea about it. And if you do this, you are too silly, okay? And you are going to have voting, and for sure you are not going to find more than 60. But when you have the committee of the hospital, in many occasions, you are going to have consensus about certain points. To be honest with you, I used to be in US, 30 or 40 years ago, and they may ask us to come to certain meetings or whatever. To be honest with you, most of these meetings, only 2 or 3 people, they know why they have this meeting and what they should do, and they have their own view about what's going on, and they are going to explain to other dumb people, sitting and listening without knowing anything, and they are going to gain the agreement and the acceptance from everyone, which is not the case of the companion. Here you have very thorough, very well-educated people. They know what's going on. They know how to deal and handle with this problem. Sayyidina Abu Bakr will call people, the one we mentioned, ask them, have anyone of you hear the Prophet ﷺ saying anything about this matter? And this may be parallel to this, but not coming by Sayyidina Abu Bakr, coming by someone else. Then, if there's no, we have three laws, the first step is going to try to listen to the discussion of the people and to come to the best conclusion that he has. Same way you have it during Sayyidina Umar al-Khattab, same way you have it during, and many of these companions that I mentioned, they have the same pattern of analyzing. If you are experts, I would like to ask you this question. What's the meaning of this? Please tell me. I don't understand the meaning. When you said, look at the Quran. How often you are going to find in the Quran an answer for fiqh question? Be honest with me. Be truthful. Please answer this question. Shall I pick some of you and ask, or you are going to answer? When you have fiqh problem and you look at the Quran, how often you are going to find your answer?
Very little.
Very little. What percentage?
2%.
10. You are too optimistic, I think. Everyone agrees that in 10% you are going to find the answer in the Quran? Maybe 5. Okay, thank you. So, here comes the second question. Why they put the Quran at the top and keep looking in the Quran when the expectation is in 95% they are not going to find anything? Yes?
Maybe the leader is looking to see somebody else may have an inspired understanding. Maybe that person can come to yet or something like that.
Okay. Now I'm going, you may not have the answer. I'm going to give you this answer. This is not my answer. This is initiated by famous Imam called al-Shatibi in his book Muwafaqat. Okay? And I'm fully convinced with it. You may not be as such. Okay? Imam al-Shatibi said, those knowledgeable people, they are going to establish firstly from the Quran, from their understanding of the Quran, general rules that may be looked, this idea came to me right now, may be looked at as the constitution today. Okay? Yani here they are going to have general rules derived from their understanding of the Quran. Is this point clear? If you want to have it more obvious, my hobby, to collect books all of since my young age, and I bought a book called, this is perhaps 40 years ago or so, and I'm going to tell you this story just to show how my idea changed. I bought that book. What is the book? The title of the book is Istidrakat Aisha ala al-Sahaba. Yani when Sayyida Aisha, she is going to criticize ijtihad of some of the companions. To be honest with you, when I read the book, I was young, I did not get this idea. After having this idea, which came not from me, it came from Imam al-Shatibi, you are going to find most, if not all, of these points mentioned in that book. It's a common look to the Quran, understood by Sayyida Aisha, to refute one of the narrations that companion said. Is this point clear? When I have this idea, you are going to find perhaps all or most of these points, they are as I said. Here you have certain, perhaps the closest word to say constitution or rules or common law or whatever. Okay. This point is for discussion. Even if you completely reject this, please write it down and let's discuss it, because I'm here not to give benefit, I'm here to get benefit from it. The second point, he said as-sunnah. What's the meaning of sunnah? Even though this may sound very easy question, I'm going to ask it. What's the meaning of sunnah? The way, very good. The way. When you say the way, okay, if you walk here, you are in the way. If you walk here, you are in the way. If you walk in the middle, you are, especially if you have very broad way. Right? Okay. What do they mean by this? I'm going to make it more clear for you. You have one statement. I'm going to show it to you and then try to explain it. In this statement, a person described three of the famous scholars. He said al-Awza'i, this very famous scholar, even though some of you may not know him, and you used to be faqih and mujtahid. Al-Awza'i, he is knowledgeable in hadith, but he is not knowledgeable in sunnah. Sorry, opposite, erase it. Awza'i is knowledgeable in sunnah, but not knowledgeable in hadith. Sufyan al-Thawri is knowledgeable in hadith, not knowledgeable in sunnah. Malik is knowledgeable in hadith and sunnah. Now I want to ask, what's the difference between hadith and sunnah? What's the difference? Yes?
Maybe hadith means more the chains and their narrations.
That's right. Here you have the hadith. That means you have this chain which comes with a narration from the Prophet, that the Prophet said so or did so. The tradition or the sunnah means a collective data of what you understand from many ahadith. You see the difference? I give you an example about it, and this is narrated in Bukhari. In Bukhari, it's mentioned that a companion woman called Fatima bint Qais, this is not the daughter of the Prophet ﷺ, Fatima bint Qais, a famous companion woman, she narrated a hadith during the time of Umar ibn al-Khattab. And this hadith came to who? To Umar ibn al-Khattab. What did Sayyidina Umar say? This in Bukhari. We are not going to quit the book of Allah and the tradition of the Prophet for a narration from a woman. Did not mean about it. In fact, this was the case. What's the meaning of this? Because this was like surprise, Even Ibn Hajar in his interpretation of Sahih al-Bukhari would say, I haven't found any hadith contradict with Fatima bint Qais. You see? This is not what meant by Umar ibn Khattab. He said, I have certain understanding of the Holy Quran and the Sunnah of the Prophet, the tradition of the Prophet ﷺ, for this particular issue, which in my opinion, they are, this idea that I have, this establishment that I have, is much stronger than the narration that woman gave me. You got this point? And I think all Muslims, they should at least feel the difference. These data that we have nowadays, they are not the same. Firstly, at top comes the Holy Quran. Okay? For example, I'll give you an example about it. When you say Zuhr prayer is 4 rak'ahs, If I went to the computer to give you the proof and evidence that Dhuhr prayer is 4 rak'ahs, and I brought to you these papers that Dhuhr prayer is 4 rak'ahs, you think this is the evidence? If I look at this as an evidence, I am too unjust. Why? Because Dhuhr 4 rak'ahs has been narrated through millions of people nowadays. After millions, the number will cut down a little bit, 100,000, then 10,000 at the time of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So even if I brought this is not the case. The strength of this narration is much more stronger than all of this paperwork that I have. You got this point? And for sure the Holy Quran has been narrated in this way. When you say authentic hadith, and we should highly respect, don't misunderstand me. I'm not of those people who try logically to refute some of the ahadith. I'm not such a person, okay? I would like not to see anyone, has this practice. But these people, they are really scientific, and academic, in their way. And according to Imam al-Shafi'i, and he mentioned about the Hanafi and Maliki that we are going to speak shortly about them. They established their school by having certain rules, or qawa'id we call in Arabic language. These certain rules, they are derived from the Holy Quran and from the different narration of the Prophet ﷺ that you may call it sunnah. This point clear? And these are going to be definite rule for these madhabs. You may differ with them. You may say this rule is not definite, whatever. But for those people, they are definite. Why they should do so? Again, don't misunderstand me. I have the full and highest respect of ahadith in the Nabawi Sharif. Because the authentic hadith, according to most of scholars, especially in the time of phase 3 or phase 4, but even in the time of the Prophet, they are not going to be equal to the Quran. But when the time go on, it's going to be the possibility much more. That's why, as I said, most of the scholars, they said the authentic hadith is in high probability. Our rules from the Holy Quran and the tradition, they are confirmed. Okay? At least this is what Imam al-Shatibi said in his book about al-Hanafiyya and al-Malikiyya. If I want to translate this statement to my understanding, how am I going to understand it? Here, the faqih or the mujtahid, he has a problem. When you say al-Hadith al-Nabawi is of high probability, let's put number. Let's say 80%. You agree with 80% or you want to change the number? Good? Okay. If you say 80%, what does this mean? That means whenever you come to 100 hadiths, according to your statistic, when you come to 100 hadiths, 20 of them, they are not going to be strong one. And this is a problem. For me, it's not a problem, but for them, it's a problem. They are asked to have the rule. What do you think the rule? And they should give an answer. So what did they try to do? Be careful now with me. Both of them, the Hanafi and Maliki, they broaden their resource. They have a lot of ahadith collection. Namely, in Hanafi and Maliki madhab, al-hadith al-mursal is accepted. What is the hadith al-mursal? When you have missed in the chain the companion. Because the most probability that there is only one missed person who is companion, and all companions, they are truthful. You may have other possibility that this may be not companion or successor, but the highest probability that this is a companion. So they broaden their resource of ahadith and try to refine them through their rules. Okay? They are going to expose all of these massive data of ahadith to the rules that they have. If they fit with them, they will say this is ahadith, or this is the rule. When it doesn't fit with them, then they stop. The way of refinery is completely different between the Maliki and Hanafi people. But the original idea is the same, okay? Yani here when you said the hadith, the authentic hadith, it's of high probability we should get over this problem. How we are going to get over it? By broadening our resource a lot and try to refine them all over the rules that we derive from the Holy Quran and the Holy tradition of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Why this was called al-Ra'i and the other one al-Ahadith? Because the first one, they used to, for any matter or any problem, to put the all possibilities. Possibility number 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, okay? And try to see how the resemblance of it, and try to get the better answer of it. Whereas, this is why it was called Madrasat al-Hadith. They are going to refine the hadith in the same way, but most of their way of refinery, it depends on narration. Namely, maybe the tradition in Medina al-Munawwara, maybe that this is well known for people, maybe this or that, okay? Yeah, here the way of refinery is different, but the original idea, they are the same. As I said at the beginning, most of the companions, in my mind at least, they may be not the most. The one I have named, all of them, they used to go by this way, as we receive. Yani I mentioned, I'm going to repeat them. Abu Bakr, Umar, Uthman, Ali, Zayd ibn Thabit, Abdullah ibn Mas'ud, Ibn Abbas, Sayyidah Aisha, and perhaps some others, okay? I was about to say that from the other school. What is the other school? It did not come yet. It's going to come later on. But I'm going to speak about it now. The other school, even though they admit that the hadith is high probability and not confirmed, they have different way of dealing with this hadith. How is the different way of dealing? They are going to narrow their resource and be more strict about collection of the hadith and take it all for sure. See the difference? The first one, they are going to broaden it and refine it according to their rules that they derive from the Holy Quran and the Sunnah Nabawi, the tradition of the Prophet. The second one, they are going to narrow it and be too selective about it and take all of it. I was about to say from this school, we don't have any companion, but when I read this hadith of Bani Qurayza, that's me, there's some companion they were as such. I may not be able to name some of them, but I look at them in this group. You see, those who prayed Asr on their way, did they reject the instruction of the Prophet ﷺ? No. They applied that instruction from him ﷺ to best of their knowledge about the Quran and the tradition. And this was the outcome that they came. I'm not telling you that they were right. The others, they took it as it and practiced it. And that's what does this tell us? That these two ways, they have been available in this nation from the beginning, from the first day, because this is in the day of the Prophet ﷺ. They were accepted by the Prophet ﷺ. And the most beautiful point about it, that the Prophet ﷺ did not even condemn one of them or say that this is better than the other. And this is the tradition of the Prophet ﷺ. Leave it open. Let people work. Let people have their opinion, okay? So that's what make me think, even though I had hard time, to pick up names. I may pick up, this way pick up, by some of the Hanafi people, with full respect to all Sadat and the companions. They said from this school is Abdullah ibn Umar and Anas ibn Malik. They mention another companion, I may differ with them about him, Abu Hurairah. Okay? Here, just put in your mind that in the time of the Prophet, you have the two schools of thoughts. Both of them, they were encouraged by the Prophet ﷺ. According to the collection of narration that we have nowadays, most of the famous companions, they were according to the first school of having the rules, as I said, and some of them, they were from the other school. Okay? Shall we stop here?
That is about 10 minutes.
10 minutes, okay. Am I going fast or the idea is quite clear? Okay? So here, we mentioned some names about the other companion. I don't know how accurate I am. Okay, I should be too conservative, in mentioning them, because I'm quite sure about the way of ijtihad in the time of the Prophet ﷺ, but I may not be that successful, to give you names, of that regard. This has been mentioned, so I mentioned them, but I'm not quite sure. I'm more sure about the first group that I mentioned. And really, I enjoyed my study when I returned back to that book that I told you about, to find out that Sayyidah Aisha, in all of these criticisms she gave to the others, was based on this matter, of having her own rules derived from the Holy Quran, the tradition, and she refuted what has been mentioned by someone else. After this, we move to phase number 4, and as you may expect, you are going to find here, as anything, in this life, it starts like a mixture, and then you are going to have the split, and you have the differences, when you go further. And here, you are going to have more solid, well-established school, in Kufa and in Medina al-Munawwara. So in phase 4, you start to have those famous fuqaha who came to our Islamic history, and we still up till now they teach and learn fiqh according to their way. So as you may expect in phase 4, we have many of these fuqaha that some of us may not be familiar with them. And here, I don't want anyone to think that we only have Abu Hanifa in Kufa and Malik in Medina. I may bring other names. You have Al-Awza'i, you have Lays ibn Sa'ad, you have Sufyan al-Thawri, you have Ibn Abi Zaib, you have Ishaq ibn Rahawayh, you have this, you have many of those scholars, who were at almost the same time of Malik and Abi Hanifa. Malik passed away 179, Abu Hanifa passed away 150. To best of my knowledge, all those famous names that I mentioned, and many of these that I did not mention, they used to go in the same way that we explained. I'm not here to say the other school did not have anyone. I'm quite confident and sure that they may have one. I may fail to mention the name. I'm confident from the time of the Prophet and all the way, you have some of these schools. Shortly later on, inshallah, we'll speak who did resurrect this school and make it too famous. Okay? You have a very unique person, who makes the fame for this school, later on. But up till now, in our phase, most of these fuqaha, or all of them, they are almost in one pattern. They may differ. Most of them, they are much closer to Malik than Abu Hanifa. Even though you are going to find some differences in their way of refining the ahadith. They are not going to be exactly same as Malik. You got my point? They are much closer to Imam Malik. Okay? But they are going to have some differences. And as you may see, anything in this life, you look at it as a range. And you have the people, in this line, in different points, spots. Give you example about it. Imam Shafi'i, who is the one I was speaking about, that he is the one who makes the first school famous and make it quite obvious. I highly respect that he gives this statement, and I depend on it a lot. He said, among the tabi'een, the closest one to hadith is Ata. Among this layer, the closest one to hadith is al-Awza'i. Even though he praised the fiqh of Malik and fiqh of Lays ibn Sa'ad. What does he mean by this? He means that Awza'i and Ata, they respect the Sunnah and the other they don't respect? No. He means that these scholars, they are of that school, but they are the closest, the nearest to our school. Okay? Because as I told you, you have like a line and you have different points, in this line. And one is going, and we don't have just sharp edges, and either you are here or there or whatever. You have all possibilities. And here, in very smart way, Imam Shafi'i said that this, in the layer of tabi'een, the closest one to us was Ata, and the layer of those mujtahideen and fuqaha, the closest one to us was al-Awza'i. I may add, I don't know how accurate I am, in the layer of the companion, the closest one of the first group that I spoke to that school is Abdullah ibn Abbas. It is here, just take it by ear. These names that I put in the middle, they are from this school. But some of them, according to Ibn Abbas, they are much closer to our school than the others. Okay. I'm not familiar or related with the time. Should we stop here? Or? Okay. There's a very, each point I mentioned, they are very important. Please don't hesitate to ask question or this or that, or to argue, or to completely, attack me, and say this completely wrong, and I'll be too happy, to hear these comments.
Can you give an example of something that was a consensus ruling or ijma?
You have enough, and perhaps the most precise book about it, madhab al-ijma' written by Ibn Hazm. Ibn Hazm is a very knowledgeable person, and really he is very smart in phrasing the word to show you the ijma'. And you have a lot of these matters. We'll stop here, inshallah. After Maghrib, we'll reconvene. Again, don't forget your questions and your feedback.